And this is the first episode of our podcast, Obsessively Focused. Today we're going to talk about the group stages for the League of Legends World Championships 2016. So I think we'll probably begin with Group A. Joseph, who do you have winning Group A?
Uh, Group A is definitely going to be Rocks Tigers for first. I think there's a reasonable contest between CLG and G2 for second place in that group, but I'm going to give it to CLG for second and G2 in third and Albus in fourth.
Okay. I also have Rocks taking Group A. I think G2's bot lane, I'm really excited to see the bot lane matchup between Rocks and G2.
Mm.
And just based on the strength that Ven and Mithy have shown countless times at this point, I gave the number 2 spot to G2. I had CLG in third, and then I also have Albus Nox Luna in fourth. I think G2's bot lane is going to be better than CLG. Definitely.
Okay, that's fair. Like I say, I think it's going to be close fights. I actually expect the CLG G2 matchups to be hopefully some of the more exciting ones out of groups. I'm excited that they're actually starting with that for the very first game of the tournament. I think that'll be one of the most contestable matches in that it could go either way. I think CLG plays a little bit better as a team than G2, and also I'm still haunted by G2's performance at MSI. I am not sure how G2 does outside of Europe, and the only thing I have to look at for them so far is pretty abysmal. So I'm not sure how much G2 learned from their MSI disaster, but if they didn't learn enough, and I'm more inclined to think they will repeat than they will bounce back from that. Whereas, especially in contrast to CLG, who did exactly the opposite of G2 at
And
MSI.
you're not troubled by their summer split performance?
No, because they also had a very strong performance in spring within the EU.
Sure.
So I think G2 is obviously a very good team. They absolutely dominated Europe, but they are not playing in Europe. In any sense, they are not playing in Europe. Uh, yeah.
I meant CLG.
Oh,
You're not
CLG's
bothered
performance.
by CLG's mini meltdown at the beginning of summer, right on the heels of MSI?
Uh,
That was a big
okay.
reason that I put them in third.
No, I'm definitely not worried about that. Particularly because they came through it over the course of the split, and they look stronger now. And if they can carry, and they've shown that they can carry strength within their region outside of their region, and G2 has not yet shown that they can translate their in-region strength to the world stage.
That is very true. Am I right in thinking that both of us have rocks
Yeah.
in or close to the final?
Yeah. I'm. It's hard to call the overall winner, but I definitely think Rocks will at least get to the semifinals stage, and it would not be surprising to me at all for them to come out with a win of
Yeah,
the entire tournament.
I'm. I've been really, really impressed
Yeah.
with their performance in Korea,
Yeah.
and I think that there's a pretty good chance that they just take the whole thing.
Yeah. It would not surprise me actually to see a Rocks v SKT final. Um,
Ooh.
I kind of hope, just for the sake of the competitive spirit, that if Rocks and SK2 do face each other, that they do it in semifinals, and then we're able to get a cross-regional finals. I think those are a little more engaging for the worldwide audience.
Definitely.
But
Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about finals, but I think
okay,
first we should get
yeah,
into the rest of the groups.
makes sense.
So,
Makes sense. So,
uh,
what did you pick
tell
for
me about
Group
Group.
B?
Yeah, so for Group B, I had SKT in first,
Mm-hmm.
IMEI in second,
Mm.
Cloud9 in third, and Flash Wolves in fourth.
Oh.
Uh, I have been just so impressed by the champion selection, just the champion variation across IMEI season, and particularly in their playoff run and qualifying to Worlds. I'm a little bit nervous about their inclination to take every coin flip, which I think will cost them against SKT, and I think they'll be able to do well enough against Cloud9, and I think Flash Wolves, while very exciting being from the wildcard region and qualifying for the second year in a row, I really do think Cloud9 and IMEI are really strong, as well as SKT, so it wasn't so much that I think the Flash Wolves are bad, as much as it is
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find a way to justify moving anyone else lower, if that makes sense.
Really quickly, can you explain what you mean by coin flip? About
Yeah,
yeah.
so I feel like IMEI in a situation where the odds of this team fight or this engage or this dive or this Baron call
Mm-hmm.
is 50-50. Teams like SKT or Rocks are not going to take the 50-50 odds every time and are not going to take them even most of the time. I think that's can be true for North American and European teams, and I feel like just across the LPL
Mm-hmm.
that Chinese teams, when it's 50-50, they're both inclined to go for it. And I think that IMEI has had success with that strategy, but I worry about it again on the world stage. Like, I think if both teams take a 50-50,
Mm-hmm.
then the odds stay 50-50. Whereas, like, if you keep flipping a coin and Rox just farms it out and waits for you, or SKT in this case just waits for you to lose that coin flip and then presses their advantage,
Yeah.
I think that's much more punishing than everyone deciding to fight about each objective every time.
I agree.
How'd you have it?
So I also have SKT first.
Okay.
To pretty much no one's surprise, but I actually have Flash Wolves in second. IMEI in third, but I think that's some contestability between those, although I'm more inclined to think Flash Wolves. And I have Cloud9 just in dead last.
Okay.
So I think Flash Wolves has a very good veteran team for the world stage. They've got people who have been to Worlds before and have performed well there.
Okay.
I watched their the regional qualifiers. That's what I'm looking for against AHQ, and I was pretty impressed by a lot of their teamwork and their calls. I think that they're going to struggle against some of the better teams like SKT and Rox, but I think that they're quite solid and dependable, and that's actually why I'm giving it to them over IMEI. IMEI had a really great run, especially in that really exciting 5-game series against World Elite to qualify.
Absolutely.
And it was surprising. I was also very impressed in the last game. They were down and behind for that pretty drastically for a lot, and they showed incredible mental fortitude to hang in there and make that comeback. And I think that kind of mental fortitude might be their greatest strength, to be able to overcome some difficult odds. I think that's going to help make Flash Wolves conquerable for them. But I think overall Flash Wolves is a better team over 100 games, but they aren't going to play 100 games. So
right.
Cloud9 is just Cloud9, and they're not as innovative as they used to be, and that used to be their biggest strength, both in North America and at Worlds. Without high shot calling, their teamwork isn't quite as strong. It's better. It definitely got better over the course of this year, and it's pretty good for North America, but pretty good for North America is just not going to perform well on the world stage.
Okay. What in particular, I agreed with what you said about IMEI. I felt like they had so much heart when I was watching them.
Definitely.
And I really loved that about their play style. Like, I felt like I could just see how much they wanted to win, even more than, we've talked a little bit about folks wanting individual glory or something like that. And I got the sense that they were hungry for it. But I was curious if there was anything in particular that stood out to you in their qualifying run.
For IMEI, besides that 5th game comeback, like that's the thing that sticks out to me most about it. Was it IMEI that we had talked a little bit about some of their differences in meta picks, or was that a different team?
Yeah, so that was the other thing. That was the reason that I had IMEI over Cloud9, is I feel like the Chinese meta, as far as champion pools is concerned, is distinct enough that it's going to be a problem for any team that's not able to mechanically outperform them. And so, I saw Malzahar jungle being played to a great deal of success in China, and I just think that the amount of time between qualifying and playing in Worlds, that some of the teams, like North American and wildcard teams, are just not going to have had the time to prepare.
Yeah. Do we want
to
talk?
And that their preparation will have been focused on Korean teams.
Yeah, I think that's also true. To that point, though, we could talk a little bit about the meta generally. What I noticed in prepping for this conversation is that the LMS, LPL, and LCK teams value Rift Herald way more than North American and Europe, and that's been commented a little bit during the season. And I wonder to what extent that might also affect things, particularly for the top lane, because it usually ends up being given to split push top laners. And I think that's going to undermine things for North American and European teams. That's the top lane matches that should be close to even during the mid game might get affected, much to the surprise of some of the North American teams and Europe teams.
Like if someone's taking the buff at 18 minutes, 19 minutes, which is, I feel like when it gets taken, it's often right before Baron spawns, and then the buff lasts 20 minutes either way. So
Yeah.
yeah, I hadn't thought much about that, but I do think that that could be a problem, especially if it's, a champion that you're not as used to playing against, wearing
Hmm.
a buff that you're not used to playing against. I think that could really trip up even Impact.
Yeah.
Who,
Um,
it must be said, dead last in your predictions or not, has put on a really impressive show the
Definitely.
last couple of months. I
Definitely. Yeah.
I feel like it's interesting that Cloud9 seems to need to be carried by one person, even if it's just
Yeah.
emotionally. Like you were talking about Hai's shot calling, and I feel like he was such a force, such leadership he demonstrated for them.
Yeah.
And just in this last couple weeks, I feel like Impact has just put them on his back and said,
Yeah.
I want to go to Worlds, so we are going to Worlds.
That is probably the story of Cloud9's qualifying this year, based on the games that I saw from them.
Right. I mean, I
Yeah.
think the real story, what did he say in the interview? Top die. That's all he says in
Yeah.
chat.
Excellent.
Yeah, because I
Um,
believe that his English is still not
yeah.
quite fluent, and so
Yeah. Which is interesting though, because the big problem that I see for Cloud9 is not actually the communication between Impact and the rest of the team.
right,
That seems to have been cleaned up really well. What actually does seem like more of a problem is Meteos' willingness to overcommit, and Meteos and Jinsen actually seem often not on the same page more
they've
than anyone
talked about
else.
that
Yeah.
in interviews,
Yeah.
how much they've struggled to
Hmm.
play together.
Yeah, and I think that still is a problem. When C9 was really at their peak, there was incredible synergy between Meteos and Balls in the top, and High was willing to make a lot of sacrifice plays for larger team gains, and that got them through a lot of games really strong and effectively, and none of those things are factors anymore for Cloud9,
Right.
and they just haven't replaced it with anything new. Are we ready to move on to Group C?
I think so.
All right. So for Group C, my placements are EDG in first, and then AHQ, then H2K, and then INTZ. Um,
We match.
oh, I'm actually excited for Group C. I think Group C is the most anything can happen of any group.
Okay.
EDG is another strong team. We both read the article about how surprising it was that the really strong Chinese teams last year completely underperformed. And we talked a little bit about possible reasons for that. Does it have to do with
Right.
travel and the way that different teams handle traveling, or different regions handle traveling? So there's a big question mark of will EDG live up to their potential? I think if they do, there's no question for me that they'll come in first. But the question isn't so much what's their potential, but the extent to which they'll achieve that. I think EDG is the biggest question mark for achieving potential of any team at Worlds. But they absolutely have the veteran play. They've got mechanical skill. They've got team play. They've got great analysts. I think they have all the tools that they need to get probably as far as semifinals, at least.
I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah.
My two notes on
Mm-hmm.
EDG here are 32 and 5. They have not
Mm-hmm.
lost a single series
Mm-hmm.
so far this split. And then my other note just says clear love.
Mine actually
Because
says
that was
Clear Love
all
and
I
Deft.
felt like I needed to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Mine says Clear Love and Deft. Deft, I mean,
Okay.
is also not to be overlooked.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I definitely agree.
Um,
I also, first of all, I agreed straight down the board with you. I'd like to see H2K do better, but I think that AHQ is ultimately going to come out on top, just sort of general higher bar. And then I felt bad with all these wildcard teams so low. I think I ranked all of them fourth. But in watching INTZ's qualifier, I was just really concerned about their judgment. I felt like they barely got in.
Yeah.
And that is just such a risky and tough position to come in as a challenger who's like,
Yeah. That's.
I'm concerned that I saw the hardest fight that they've got in them already, and it's not going to hold
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
even to no team on the world stage. Like qualifying for Worlds is such a huge deal.
Yeah.
And I think it's really become a clear bar. And I think that they just barely were able to get there, and
Yeah.
I'm concerned that that was all they had in
So
the tank.
two notes that I have for wildcards. First, I think that in general, over the last 5 seasons, all of the gaps between all of the regions have shrunk. I think there are still those gaps, and it probably still makes sense to kind of power rank the regions. But I think that it used to be just incredibly dramatic how much better Korean teams were than North American teams, for example. I think
Right.
I think on balance and in general, averaged, statistically speaking, whatever, however you want to phrase it, most Korean teams are still better than most North American teams. But I think that gap has shrunk a lot. We saw even just a couple years ago when Samsung Blue decided to just have a really sloppy pick ban phase against TSM. TSM was able to take that game. Not,
Right.
so I think
Well,
that
and not to mention MSI this year.
as well as MSI this year. So I think any team that doesn't treat the wild card team seriously enough and thinks that they're a complete joke is going to pay a price for that.
Absolutely.
The other note that I had, um, oh yeah, for actually those were really the two notes, is just how much of a gap there still is between the regions, but it shrunk, and also the danger of not taking the wild card seriously. I have them all last as well, but I think that they are generally better than wild card teams have been in the past, and I think that
I agree.
they
And I think
deserve
that it's
some respect.
possible. You don't have Flash Wolves last.
Flashwoods aren't wild card.
Oh, right. That's just INTZ and.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Right, right.
just the two. Um,
All right. And then Group D, where I suspect we are not going to agree. So I have, and I've changed this 3 or 4 times now.
okay,
At the moment, and what I am committing to is TSM, Samsung, Royal Never Give Up, and then Splice.
okay.
I'm really interested to see what happens with Group D. I don't know if I just want TSM to win, and that's how I had them initially in third, and then I changed it and I put them in second, and now I've changed it again and I put them in first. And so it's possible that it's regional bias talking. I'll certainly
Yeah.
acknowledge that, but I really do think that they have come such a long way this split and this year.
Hmm.
And while I'm not sure about their ability to get much past groups, I do think that they'll definitely advance out of groups, and I think that it's a very real possibility that they will come in first. I thought Samsung played great. I originally had Royal Never Give Up ranked a little bit higher, and then just looking back at what happened to Chinese teams last year and sort of the other international performances, the more I looked at the history, the farther down my ranks they fell. And Splice, I thought they had one of the most exciting qualifiers of any team. I think Yamato is amazing. I think the players are great. I thought they're probably one of my favorite European teams, and I think they just got stuck in a really, really, really hard group. I don't think I would have had them fourth in any group other
Yeah.
than this one.
That's fair. That's fair. Um, I also have them fourth, but we definitely have difference. I actually have Royal Never Give Up in first, and Samsung
Okay.
in second, and TSM in third.
Oh, you don't think they're even going to make it out?
I don't, generally. Again, though, with Royal Never Give Up, we have that same question mark about will Chinese teams live up to their potential, and
Right.
it's entirely possible that we'll see kind of what we saw last year, where we have a team that did really well and seems to have all of the tools and just can't come together in groups and goes nowhere. In which case, I think TSM has a very good chance of getting out of groups. But it's important, and I was going to say this on the last group as well, is it seems to me when I was watching all the different qualifiers from all the different regions, some teams got out of their region because they played very well. They made very smart calls. They had good strategies and good pick bans. Other teams got out of their regions because they played against teams that made too many mistakes. And just
Right.
to some extent, the game is about being able to punish your opponent's mistakes. So it's not always, a discredit that your opponent made a mistake, because the big question about you winning is how well can you capitalize on that. But I feel like TSM didn't necessarily get out of their region because they played really well and they made incredible shot calls and great decisions. I feel like they were just the best in North America at punishing their teams, at punishing their opponent's mistakes, which
Okay, and
which is a
Samsung
valuable
isn't
skill.
going to give you. Right.
Yeah, well, there's also a huge question over Samsung when they played KT Rolsters for their qualifier. There was a heavy expectation that KT was going to win. and the casters the whole way through were completely surprised, especially by Core JJ on support and his showing up. So the big question is Samsung going to play the way they played against KT? I think they have a great chance for getting out of groups. If they play the way they played throughout the split, kind of lackluster but solid, I think that TSM could actually come out ahead of Samsung if they don't play at that high level that they showed against KT. So again, it's a question of achieving potential for Samsung as well. If Samsung lives up to their potential, I expect them to get out of groups. If they kind of falter and don't have the impressive gameplay that we saw against KT, then I think TSM or even Splyce could win. Same story with Splyce for me. Really great team. I think they would have a much better chance in pretty much any other group. And again, it's one of those, if a team doesn't respect them, Splyce is, I think, about as good as TSM. So I think those could be hotly contested games. And then if either RNG or Samsung don't live up to their potential, it's not out of the question at all for Splyce to be able to get out of groups.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I thought that their qualifying run in particular, I thought their season was great, but I think their coaching staff is really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought just the way that the mental fortitude, to borrow your phrase, that they showed, particularly at the end there, was just incredible. You know, there was I don't even remember which game it was, but there was a point where they had lost like 2 massive fights in a row, and they just stayed calm and stayed comfortable and continued to communicate with each other and continued to play in a way that protected what was left for them to protect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think somehow I think that having no lane swaps makes the game a little more tense. Like, it makes it more interesting as a spectator, but it makes it more tense for the players. And so I think the emotional discipline required to play standard lanes is much higher. And I think that Splyce has shown that they really excel at that. Again, I think just the mechanical play is going to be a problem for them in this group.
Yeah. That sounds very reasonable to me. All right, so that's all of our groups. I expect the most exciting games to actually be CLG against G2, AHQ against H2K, and TSM against Samsung. I think those will be the most intense and exciting potential swings for who gets out of groups. And I think they're also some of the more even matches. I'm not always a big fan of just watching complete blowouts, and I think none of those games will be blowouts. I expect a lot of back and forth between those games. Those should be the most fun to watch, I think, out of groups.
I'm excited. I'm really excited for Group A. I'm looking forward to the bot lane matchup between Rox and G2. I'm looking forward to G2 versus CLG. And then pretty similar, I'm really excited to see IMEI Cloud9.
Oh, yeah.
I think those will be really interesting. I had a lot of 2-3s.
Mm-hmm.
AHQ and H2K, I'm really excited to see. And then just because I love North America and I love Europe, I'm really excited to see TSM versus Splyce.
Those should actually be good games as well, TSM v Splyce.
I hope so.
Yeah. I expect a lot from those. So all up should be a pretty good tournament.
I expect it to be the best world so far.
I think that's a fair analysis, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the gaps, as you were saying before, I think the gaps are as small as they've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's definitely possible that this is the year where someone other than Korea manages to take it home. Although I think that that's highly unlikely. Possible, highly unlikely.
I'm actually inclined to say that I'd say Korea has about more of a 50-50 chance this year. I think, they still have 2 extremely strong teams, but I think there are other teams that are at least deserving to challenge. And it's a big question about how well they prepare and how well, obviously, they execute. But it seems less far-fetched than it has in the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about that as though it's never happened, even though the very first Worlds went to Fnatic, and the second or third went to Taipei Assassins. Was that third?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Second, because third is SKT.
Yeah, third and fifth are SKT, and Samsung for fourth. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that's. I guess that's our analysis. Is there anything else left for us to add?
I think this is the end of our very first podcast episode.
Yay! Awesome.
Congratulations, team.
Congratulations to us, and we're both definitely looking forward to this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll be
All
able to
right.
get some more analysis recorded
Mm-hmm.
while it's happening.
Yeah. We'll definitely at least do one of these once we know who's gonna make it out of groups.
Yeah, definitely.
Possibly one even halfway through the tournament, just to see how things are going.
Yeah, I think both of those are great ideas.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's all we got.
That's all we got. Thank you.
Thank you.